There are some holidays that we celebrate in the church because they're Christian holidays, like Easter and Christmas. But then there's those holidays that didn't originate in the church, days that we celebrate in the church, like Mother's Day and Father's Day, that are good to recognize because we're called to honor our fathers and our mothers, but because they didn't originate in our scriptures, they pose a few challenges for us as we walk into the church. You see, when we celebrate Christmas or Easter, we have Jesus as our perfect example. And we're celebrating what God did for us through that perfect example of love and sacrifice and humility and care. But when we celebrate Mother's Day and Father's Day, we don't have a perfect earthly example of that. Sorry. Instead, we have our experiences and our expectations. And the mix of those two dynamics means that when we walked into this place this morning, we walked into an environment where we collectively care for each other, but with the burden of our individuality a little more prevalent and more on our minds than it usually is. All of our experiences are different, which means that on days like today, we all start in a different place. We might have grown up in a healthy family, and we might have great ongoing relationships with our parents. But they still weren't perfect, right? Or we might have had a difficult childhood, and our parents' examples might have come to us more in the form of what not to do. So we end up bringing all of our histories into how we experience days like this, even in the church. Maybe especially in the church. And it can make these kinds of holidays, well, a little complex. Mother's and Father's Day can be particularly hard for those who have lost parents or children, or for those who would like to be mothers and fathers but haven't had the opportunity. The fact is, on days like this, we're really trying to take all of our collective human experiences and then we work to understand the meaning of them in the context of our faith. But we do so with the hindrance of our unique human experience at the forefront of our minds instead of our godly identity as the first thing we're bringing to the table. And this is different from what we typically do in the church. Normally, we come into this place of worship with our family of believers, with our hearts already tuned to the task of prioritizing our Christian identity for the sake of seeking God together and serving each other. But when we walked in this morning, ready to either celebrate or try to contend with our earthly experiences and expectations that surround the idea of motherhood, we did so as individuals with individual gratitude or individual hurt, or probably a mix of the two. Because of this, I want to take today and recenter us on God, on who God is for us, collectively. And I want to do this because I don't want us to get stuck on feeling like we have to choose between either gratitude for the experience we had with mothers and motherhood or contending with the disappointments that this day reminds us of. Here's the thing. Days like today are very useful because they expose that when we make a habit of approaching God's word with our experience first, we're bound to get caught up in that experience, in us. Was our relationship with our mom good or bad? Did it demonstrate God's love, or are we having to find a different box to put that in? And then the inevitable whys come rushing in. Why did I have a good experience, but the person next to me didn't? Or the other way around? But if we step back from our experience and we approach the scriptures with God first and with our identities as the children of man second to our true identities as children of God, then suddenly our experiences, whether they were joyful or painful or a mix of the both, suddenly those experiences are infused with meaning that carries us beyond the trap that separates us into winners or victims and bridges over our individual experiences to the place where those experiences, whether good or bad, are infused with eternal significance and meaning. You see, those individual experiences, when we give them to God to use by claiming our right as the redeemed children of God, those experiences are the instances in life when God was shaping us for what comes next and for the ministry to the people that God places in our lives. We are the children of God. And this gives us unique insight into the meaning of our histories and into the fact that God saw everything that has happened to us and everything that will happen to us. And those moments that add up to shape us have eternal experiences in God's plan. But experiences on its own experiences on their own can't define our purpose. And if we allow it to, we're in danger of accepting the limitations that our experiences predict. We know, though, as children of God, we don't get our purpose from our experiences. We get our purpose from our identity. John 1:12-13, in talking about Jesus, reminds us, "But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of man, but God." When we made the choice to believe in Jesus and accept his sacrifice, we were given the right to shed our individual experiences with our earthly families that might have been nurturing or challenging. We shed that identity-shaping imperfections of those experiences for the greater identity of being a child of the perfect God. So today we're going to look at what the Bible tells us God is like. But we're going to do that with the lens that we don't often consider, and that's God's motherly characteristics. We spend a lot of time talking in the church about God as our Father, and this is right. Jesus told us to pray, right? Our Father who art in heaven. But the Bible is filled with motherly imagery for God as well. And when we open the scriptures to these passages, we're able to see another facet of who our God is and how our God provides. One that, because it comes with motherly characteristics that are familiar and reassuring because we recognize them through the gift of our earthly mothers who have comforted us and cared for us from the moment that we took our first breath. Because of that connection, these passages that speak of God using motherly imagery hold more than the simple reassurance that we're loved. They also hold the essential message of our identity. You see, while we are truly a mix of both our fathers and our mothers, research suggests that we get most of our social and our cultural sense of identity from our mothers. And maybe this is why when I looked at these verses in the Bible that speak of God in terms of God's motherly characteristics, what came through is the underlying message of identity and the purpose that goes along with that identity. So we're going to start at the beginning, Genesis 1:26-27. And that reads, "Then God said, 'Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth.' So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." From the very beginning, we see that humankind, male and female, are made in the image of God. They are born of God, which means in our limited understanding that God is the perfect representation of both our earthly fathers as well as our earthly mothers. I think one of the unique things about being a mother, is that while we're raising our children, we often feel bogged down by the immediate. These tiny people we worked so hard to give birth to now need to be fed, and they need clean clothes, and we need to stop them from putting a fork in the outlet. This one. Yeah, that wasn't a fork. Yeah. Now I want to do story time, but I'm not going to. Huh? Oh, should I do story time? Okay. One time, when Ian was probably about 7 years old, he came to me in the morning. And now Ian was the kind of kid that just carried encyclopedias everywhere. He told me at like 5 he didn't read fiction because it was a waste of time. But then when he got to like 7, he said he did read like Treasure Island, and he said that that was okay because he could tell that the author did a lot of research. He was a little intense as a child. So Ian came to me that morning and he said, I need some batteries. And I said, I'm gonna have to get them to you later. And he said, well, he might have been 8, right around 7 or 8. And then he said, but I need to make this electromagnet. And he had found a map for like a schematic for like a little electromagnet in one of his encyclopedias. And I just said, oh. And then, and so then I had put like Paige and Scout, I'd put them in their cribs. We have 4 if you don't know. Put them in their cribs, and then I went to get in the shower, and while I was in the shower, the lights flickered. But they came back on, so I thought we were okay, right? And so this is a good thing because we lived in the country, and if that wouldn't have come back on, that would have been a lot of soap in my eyes. But so I get out of the shower and I dry off and I come out of the room and I walk by Ian's room and it is pristine. There is not a thing out of place. And then I look across the hall towards Megan's room, and she's on her bed, on her stomach with a book, just kicking her legs back. And I said, what happened? And he's like, nothing. And I'm like, what happened? And so he says, well, do you remember this morning when I asked you for magnets, or for batteries? Well, I wanted to make an electromagnet, and you didn't have any batteries. And I said, oh, well, what'd you do? So he had pulled 2 alligator clips out of another science kit that he had with the copper wires inside. And he had taken a broken nightlight, and he plugged it a little bit into the wall and then attached the alligator clips to it to try to make the circuit or whatever needed to be made. And it fried. And it sent him back far enough to scare him good. And like the copper was burned out of the wires. I mean, it was a thing. And so I'm like, what did we learn? By this time, he's kind of crying because he didn't really get it. So I'm like, your sisters were in their crib. You could have started a fire. I was doing to try to make this so he knows it's serious, Could have started a fire, so he's crying. And I'm like, okay, so what did we learn? And he's like, that there's more electricity in the wall than in a battery. And I'm like, you mean you learned not to play with electricity? That too. Yeah. So we have to stop these little people from putting things in the outlets, and it doesn't really change as they get older. But as they grow, so do their needs. And where we used to be able to put them down for a nap and a few blessed moments of silence, our days become dominated by carpooling and cooking and planning and doctor's visits and school plays and everything else. And then we're teaching them to drive. Dave did most of that. I wanted my children to have some sort of self-esteem when we got done. So we're teaching them to drive and filling out college applications and wondering how in the world they're ever going to make it on their own because they're still calling us to ask what to have for a snack. And we don't really mind it. But as mothers, even if we happen to be blessed with a husband who parents well alongside us, our minds are never not on those people who gave birth to. Just like God can't forget us. Isaiah 49:14-15 reminds us of the time when Zion, God's people, in their difficulty felt alone. But Zion said, "The Lord has forsaken me. My Lord has forgotten me." Oh, you need to switch it. Is there a delay on that when we do it that way? It's okay? All right. I'm not doing the clicker today, so. Huh? Will the clicker work too? Okay. Yeah, we're real put together here today. All right. Okay. But Zion said, "The Lord has forsaken me. My Lord has forgotten me." But just like human mothers know, forgetting our children isn't possible. So God responds to Zion's fear. Can a woman, wait. Yes.
Are you sure?
No, it's not working. There we go. Now I don't know. Am I controlling it or are you controlling it? You're controlling it. Okay, we'll do that. They went to a class on ProPresenter, and so we're trying some new things now. Yes. So God responds to Zion's fear. Can a woman forget her nursing child or show no compassion for the child of her womb? Even these may forget, yet I will not forget you. In fact, our God not only doesn't forget us like a good mother, he pursues us. In Luke, right after the parable of the lost sheep, Luke records another of Jesus' parables. Luke 15:8-10 tells us, "Or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I'd lost.' Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." You see, not only is our God incapable of forgetting us, but our God pursues us with the diligence of a woman who finds that a silver piece has gone missing. She doesn't just lament its absence in this parable. She doesn't shrug and move on. Instead, she notices that the one that's missing, and she works to find it. She lights a lamp and she sweeps, and maybe most beautifully, she rejoices when that coin is found, just like God notices when we step off the path. And God works to bring us back. And then when we're found, God and all of heaven rejoices. When you were found and your identity was restored, God and the angels rejoiced. And if you happen to be someone who grew up in a family where you didn't feel valued or celebrated, then you might have perhaps the most beautiful understanding of the importance of this parable. So I hope that today you lean into the truth of this loving God who lights the dark corners that hide in the inherent value in our lives, because we are the living, breathing reflections of our God. I think maybe it's not a coincidence that the coin that the woman looked for was silver, because silver is one of the most reflective elements that we have. So in this parable, we have this picture of God as the woman sweeping, looking for that silver coin, clearing the identity-stealing debris of life away, the pain, the rejection, the disappointments, and then picking you up, brushing you off, placing you in the safety of his palm, and peering at you, the coin that once again reflects God's image. And the angels rejoice. I hope today you know and accept the truth that you are the living, breathing image of a God who celebrates because you have been found. And here's the miracle of redemption. If you grew up feeling invisible, You have a more thorough picture of what it means to be seen than someone who didn't grow up with that particular scarcity. You will see God in ways others never will. And that's the beauty from the ashes that God has promised for all of us. From here, though, the picture of God as a mother figure continues to develop, because when Jesus lamented over Jerusalem before his death, he again uses the mother imagery to communicate his longing even when we are unfaithful. Even in those moments after we have been found by God and we decided to step away, like a mother who sits by the window with empty arms, God still longs for us. Luke 13:34 reads, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. This isn't the controlling God that the world thinks we serve. This isn't the God whose favor must be earned. This is the God who sees the pain and longs to protect. This is the God who waits and who watches and who knows the mistakes his children make, mistakes that will hurt and devastate themselves and others, but remains determined to find a way, to make a way for them to come home. This is the God who knows that we as individuals are sometimes subject to forces we can't control, but he still desires to protect us if we'll only allow those wings to open around us and draw us into that relationship that, if we are honest, we long for too. And even though Jesus is lamenting the situation where God is separated from his people, and even though loss and sadness are some of the predominant feelings that we see in these mothering verses, our God, just like the mothers we know, is not limited to sadness, because our God will also not hesitate to fight. In Hosea 13:8, the prophet reminds us that our God is a sovereign God who feels anger when his people embrace corruption and fail in their calling to bear the name of the Lord our God with the gravity it deserves. I will fall upon them like a bear robbed of her cubs and tear open the covering of their heart. There I will devour them like a lion, as a wild animal would mangle them. Of course, we know that this God who feels anger, much like a mother who feels anger, is the God who reaches down and redeems those same people who have hurt him so much. The anger is short-lived. And I think this is because it's subject to God's vision of what and who we all will be through his provision. Through the prophet Isaiah, in Isaiah 66:7-9, we hear God make a puzzling statement. Before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came upon her, she delivered a son. And he followed up this statement with the questions, who has heard of such a thing? Who has seen such a thing? Shall a land be born in a day? Shall a nation be delivered in a moment? Yet as soon as Zion was in labor, she delivered her children. And this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. How can a mother give birth without labor? And how can a civilization be born in a day? But then the next questions reveal where this line of questioning was going. Shall I open the womb and not deliver, says the Lord? Amen. Shall I, the one who delivers, shut the womb, says your God? And here we see God using the language of mothers to communicate a truth about his own nature. Just like a woman does not go into labor without a baby being born, God will not begin the process of fulfilling his promises without completing it. Our God is not going to stop in the middle of his plans any more than a mother would stop in the middle of her labor. Whew, that would be terrible. You see, we can look at what God has done in the past, and by that know what he's going to be doing in the future. Sometimes we feel those labor pains, though. We feel the weight of our expectations and our desires and the pain that surrounds us. And sometimes in the thick of it, it's hard to remember that there is a reason for the pain, that there is something that will be accomplished at the end of it, that there is a plan and that our efforts are part of that plan. So God reminds us that our pain isn't for nothing. That when those minute-long contractions feel like years stretching out, God is there. That when our days seem to produce trial after trial and we don't see an end, our God has already mapped it out. And in his perfect timing, he will accomplish what he has set to accomplish from the moment he created humanity and gave us a path to be something greater than every other created creature. We would be the children of God. The ones who walk with him and speak with God and have a relationship with him. So we know by looking at our God and piecing together these verses that demonstrate his motherly features that, like a mother, our God will not forget us, that he pursues us, that he longs for us, that he fights for us, and that he has a place for us. But like a mother's job doesn't end, God's doesn't stop there either. Because like our mothers who drag us to soccer games and sit through first semester music recitals, you guys, the music recitals, and scour our report cards, God isn't satisfied until we grow into the people he envisions we'll be. Deuteronomy 32:11-13 tells us of God's tending nature in the example of Jacob. As an eagle stirs up its nest and hovers over its young and spreads its wings, takes them up and bears them aloft on pinions, the Lord alone guided him. No foreign god was with him. He set him atop the heights of the land and fed him with the produce of the fields. He nursed him with honey from the crags, with oil from the flinty rock. Worship team, if you want to come up. When we're nearing adulthood, we often make the mistake of thinking that we can do this all on our own, right? We spread our wings and make a few halting attempts to step out of the nest with these neat new long feathers that somehow grew. But if you've been a mother or an aunt or a caregiver, you know this isn't true. There's a job to do that's largely unseen by anyone but the watching mother. And this is the agitation, the purposeful stirring up of the nest, the bits where we test the kids, where we make them call their own doctor's appointments. All of my kids are like, ugh. Even though they obviously hate it. This is the part where we tell the teenager what they wanted to hear, that they can fly, that they have everything necessary to live into the purpose that they were created to live for. And when they ironically want to cling a little longer, this is when we give them a push. Like God pushes us from our places of security so we can live out his plans for us. And so they spread their wings and fly, thinking that they're doing this all on their own, forgetting the mother bird that protects and supports from underneath. And just like us, when things are going well, we often forget that God, who in his perfect timing kicks us out of the nest, is then careful to fly beneath and match our pace in case we tire, protecting and guiding us on the path that we need to take, whether or not we ever acknowledge it. You see, the picture of God as the mother is the picture of a God who works in the background, a God who carries the unseen burden, the God who labors and loves and angers and trains and protects, a God that we can't help but to respond to. I want to invite you to stand as we read one last verse. Psalm 57:1 expresses our response to that God who loves us with the fierceness of a mother. Be merciful to me, O God. Be merciful to me. For in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge until the destroying storms pass by. Let's actually read that together. Be merciful to me, O God. Be merciful to me. For in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge until the destroying storms pass by. So today, if you walked in here with a heart that was ready to celebrate the mothers you're grateful for, or if you walked in here with brokenness, or maybe a little bit of both, my prayer for you today is that you are ministered to by the God who loves you without reservation. The God who will not forget his promises. The God who longs for you, who pursues you, who will fight for you, who will reveal his purpose for you, and when the time is right, will push you out of the nest and then fly with you.